Hey guys, welcome back to Hollywood Fails History. This week we're going to take a look at History Channel's Vikings. For those of you who have never seen Vikings, you are seriously missing out on some butt-kicking, violent Viking shenanigans. The show's fantastic, but like most shows that are based on historical time periods, they sometimes get stuff wrong. You know, like the Tudors. So with season 3 out of the way, let's take a moment to see what History Channel may have gotten wrong, aside from making all of those Hitler and the Occult, and Ancient Alien shows. Let's take a look. Part 1, Geography. Are you telling me that Scandinavians didn't know about lands to the west of Scandinavia? Some 250 years about before the Viking era, or when the show takes place, there was a mass migration of around 250,000 Saxons, Jutes, and Danes to England itself. Not to mention that for decades prior to the attack on Lindisfarne, there were lightning raids on Scotland, the Shetland Islands, and England. In fact, the Vikings were so well renowned for their sailing and navigating that they would have sailed all the way around Europe, passing England, to sell their slaves and goods in Constantinople on the other side of Greece. Sorry, Vikings, History Channel made that bit up for a little bit of drama. Part 2, Politics. The Jarl, or the Earl, seems to rule the roost like a little king. Now, Scandinavia did have a system of local chieftains and warlords and clan leaders. They did not, however, rule like a king, at least the kings that we are familiar with from the time period. Land-owning men, and sometimes women, all had a say in the juries, disputes, and conflicts that would happen within the groups. In fact, they would all decide as a group where they would go raiding in the summertime. Bad writing strikes again! Modern storytelling loves their underdogs, so the Jarl was used to create a villain for our underdog, Ragnar, to quarrel with in the first season. Sorry, Vikings, History Channel got that one wrong again. Ragnar would have had plenty to say, and would have been nearly equal with his Jarl if he was a landowner. Number 3, Peasants. In Season 2, we learn from King Ecbert of Wessex that the people of England believe that the ancient ruins scattered around England were built by giants. No, they didn't. You see, the idea that the peasants believed that the Roman ruins were built by giants may have come from an Anglo-Saxon poem called The Ruins, where they use, and I know this is a complicated concept, History Channel, but they used metaphors. They used metaphors because giants are representations of great power, the Romans being giant-like in their abilities, leaving these beautiful yet decaying ruins all around. In the late 7th, early 8th century, about 100 years before the show is supposed to take place, England had its first great historian, the venerated monk named Bede. And through his lifetime, he wrote the first comprehensive, for its time, great historical text known as the Ecclesiastical History of the English People, or Historica Ecclesiastica, this in Latin. Now, this was written 100 years beforehand, and no giants. Sorry, History Channel, wrong again. Part 4, Timing. The show starts off around 793, or 794, depending on dream sequence or reality. Season 2 and 3, around the year 800. Why is this important? Because they keep talking about Charlemagne, the first Holy Roman Emperor, as if he's been dead, and dead for a while. This is a problem because he was still alive in 800 AD. In fact, so alive, he would have been stomping Ragnar's butt into the ground when he tries to sack Paris in Season 3. In fact, Charlemagne was only 67 when he died in 814, so he was very much kicking butt towards the end of his life. That's a big screw-up, History Channel. Number 5, Athelstan. Athel who now? Athelstan is the little monk that Ragnar kidnaps/saves in Season 1. Who later goes on to cause much tension between Ragnar and his friends. The man crush is strong with this pairing. Athelstan is not in the Viking sagas. In fact, he's an add-on character like many of the others, such as Rollo, Floki, Siggy, and others. He may, however, be based on a real monk named Elsign. I'm not sure how to pronounce this, but this is the spelling here. He was a real monk who lived in the court of Charlemagne, and he exchanged letters with the monks from Lindisfarne. This may in fact be how the courts of Europe found out about the attack in 794. So at the time he wasn't making friends with Ragnar, he was pushing 60 in Germany. You lose again. Number 6, sacrifice. Now, in the show, we're featured to a human sacrifice, and the priest of the Norse religion is shown as tricky and deceitful when he tries to trick Athelstan into sacrificing himself. Now, thanks to the Roman policy of destroying every non-Greco-Roman pagan thing, and Christianity's policy of destroying all the pagan things, we don't really have a lot of sources on this particular subject. But what anthropology shows is that many cultures, even through the Middle Ages, had human sacrifice. This was not uncommon in many places around the world. Now in the show, after Athelstan figures out that they were trying to trick him and it shows he's still a Christian, we are then shown someone who voluntarily takes his place to be sacrificed. That is something the show does correctly, not the tricking part, but the voluntary part. In that Norse culture and in many Northern European cultures, human sacrifice was usually voluntary. The only cases that are sort of known that we can kind of tell are prisoners of war being sacrificed. Now that was exceptionally common. If you think about it, Romans committed human sacrifice as well, especially in their Colosseum. Instead of sacrificing to the gods, however, they were sacrificing to placate the masses and entertainment. Though you got part of it right, History Channel, you still tried to portray Vikings and pagans as tricky and trying to kill you. Thanks. Number 7, timing. Again. Seriously, what year is it? It can't be any later than 803. Unless Ragnar's younger boys are suffering from a disease I like to call Rome syndrome. Rome syndrome is where the children of the series remain as such, even if the show stretches over 20 years of time. Now, Ragnar's boys, looks like the oldest one's probably about 7, so that's where I'm getting the year estimate. So, going from that, with the references to the dead Charlemagne aside, in season 3, Athelstan fathers a little boy with Princess Judith named Alfred. Now, that's all well and good, but this Alfred is supposed to be Alfred the Great, who is later crowned the king of all the English in 899. Now, the problem is he was born in the late 840s, so unless when they went to England it magically was 40 years later, he can't be that kid's father. I mean, that's fine to speculate, that's cool and all, but it doesn't work out. Seriously, History Channel, are you trying? Number 8, fictionception. Sorry, Tumblr, Floki isn't real. Much like his rival for Ragnar's affections, Athelstan, he is an add-on character. He is, however, probably based off of the real person. Nope, this guy here. Also known as Raven Floki. He is the discoverer of Iceland in the 9th century. Why is he called Raven Floki? Because according to legend, he took 3 ravens with him to help him track land as he ventured off into the ocean. He may not be Ragnar's buddy, but discovering Iceland is pretty impressive. Seriously, History Channel, I'm waiting for you to start telling us that Floki's ideas come from those ancient aliens you keep telling us about. Number 9, Paris. There's that year discrepancy thing again. In season 3, Ragnar besieges Paris, which is ruled by Charles, who claims to be the Emperor of France. Now, in at least 2 conversations, he mentions that he is the grandson of Charlemagne. Again, this is the year 800 or so. Charlemagne is still the emperor of most of Europe. But in the show, France is ruled by Charles, known to history as Charles the Simple, who ruled France between 898 and 922. That is a century later. Is France a different time zone in this show? Is that how it works? You know, England's 50 years ahead, France is 100 years ahead. What is happening? Seriously. History Channel. Number 10, Rollo. Rollo. In the show, he's Ragnar's older brother who is either bitching about his brother's success, betraying him, earning his trust back, only to betray him later again. Quite the Slytherin. Unlike the other add-on characters, because he's not in the Viking sagas, he has his own story in real history. He is the one who besieges France, nearly wrecks the place, and he does make a deal with Charles like he does in the show. And he, according to some legends, there's not a lot of historical context, he may have married Princess Gisela. Now, I say there's not a lot of historical context because Princess Gisela may not have existed. So the show kind of gets this part right, be it the wrong century and relations and timing. Anyway, Rollo is so successful in real history that his prodigy would go on to rule most of Europe. In fact, so successfully that the Queen of England and most living monarchs today are descendants of Rollo. All of that being said, I actually really enjoy this show. The characters are pretty complex, even some of the female characters. There's violence, butt kicking. It's just a grand old time. Even if I can predict where the story's gonna go, I'm still gonna watch it. It's great. So this has been Hollywood Fails History. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you next time.
Did you ever hear the saxophone let out an awful moan, let out an awful groan?
God damn it. Why can't I talk words?